Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're exploring something pretty fascinating, a kind of biological shortcut looking at the science of how acupuncture can support fertility.
It's a great topic. And I think a lot of people immediately jump to, it helps with stress, and it does. That's a huge benefit.
Right.
But the source material we're looking at today goes so much deeper. We're talking about a specific, a really quantifiable chemical reaction. It's less about general relaxation and more about hard physiology.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it all seems to revolve around this one tiny but incredibly powerful molecule,
Mm-hmm.
nitric oxide, or just NO.
Mm-hmm.
The research really makes this compelling case that acupuncture basically tells the body, hey, make more NO right here, and that single action, it just optimizes blood flow and creates a much, much healthier environment for conception.
That's the mission for today right there. We're going to unpack what nitric oxide actually is, how a needle can possibly trigger its release, and then walk through the real-world impact that has.
On ovaries, the uterus, even on sperm quality.
Exactly. It's connecting a practice that's thousands of years old with, 21st century vascular biology. It's pretty cool.
Okay, so let's start at square one. Nitric oxide. I have to admit, when I hear the word oxide, I'm thinking of, I don't know, rust or something from a chemistry textbook.
That's fair. It sounds industrial, but in your body, it's one of the most important signaling molecules you have. It's just a tiny, naturally produced gas.
A gas.
Yeah, a gas. It's super reactive, doesn't last long at all.
Yeah.
But its job is, well, it's monumental. It's the primary signal that tells your entire vascular system to just relax.
I loved the analogy the sources used for this. They said to think of tight blood vessels as a narrow road with traffic jams.
That's a perfect way to put it. When that road is narrow, you get bottlenecks. Not enough oxygen, not enough nutrients, not enough hormones can get through to do their jobs.
So nitric oxide is the traffic controller waving everyone through.
It's more than that. It's the signal that turns that one-lane road into a four-lane superhighway. That widening process is called vasodilation, and it's absolutely essential for any complex biological process, especially building a healthy egg or sperm.
Which brings us to the big question. How does a simple, tiny steel needle get the body to release this chemical?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the actual mechanism of this NO-cGMP pathway?
Right. This is where the science really clicks in. The physical stimulation of the needle, and this is especially true when they use electroacupuncture, it activates sensory neurons in the cells that line the blood vessels, the endothelial cells.
And they just release a puff of this gas.
In a sense, yes. They release a burst of nitric oxide right there, locally, where it's needed most.
Oh, so it's very targeted. The practitioner isn't just trying to boost it systemically. They're aiming for a specific area, like near the uterine artery.
It's primarily localized, yes. So once that NO is released, it floats into the smooth muscle cells that are wrapped around the blood vessels. And inside those cells, NO flips a switch. It signals the creation of another molecule, a helper molecule called cGMP.
So NO is the messenger, and cGMP is the one that actually does the work.
Exactly. NO yells relax. And cGMP is the mechanism inside the muscle that makes it happen. The muscle loosens, the vessel opens up, and blood flow just surges into that area.
The sources point out this is the same basic system behind some pretty well-known Western medicines.
It is. And this was a massive discovery. The development of drugs like Viagra was based on leveraging this exact same NO-cGMP pathway to improve blood flow.
Wow. Okay, so that really grounds this. This isn't just about, energy flow or Kia. It's measurable vascular mechanics. The takeaway is that acupuncture gives this targeted natural boost to the body's own vasodilator.
Right. And by being localized, it can be much more precise and effective for these reproductive organs than, say, trying to boost NO everywhere in the body at once.
Okay, now that we get the how, let's talk about the what. Where does this improved blood flow make the biggest difference? Let's start with female fertility, with the uterus and implantation.
Implantation is such a critical, delicate moment. For an embryo to survive, it needs to burrow into a uterine lining, an endometrium that's thick and has a rich blood supply.
It needs a welcoming home, basically.
It does. If the blood supply is poor, the lining is thin and weak, it can't provide the warmth or the nutrients that the embryo needs to attach and grow.
And doctors can actually measure this, right?
Uh-huh.
They see how restricted the blood flow is?
They can. They use a color Doppler ultrasound to look at the uterine arteries, and they measure something called the pulsatility index, or PI.
High PI means high resistance.
Exactly, high resistance. It goes back to that kinked hose analogy. The blood is struggling to get through. A healthy, receptive uterus should have a PI score, somewhere below 2.0.
And in women with fertility challenges.
You'll often see that number creep up, sometimes over 3.0. That's a major red flag for implantation failure. The vessels are just too stiff.
And this is where that landmark 1996 study comes in, the Stenner-Victorin one. They put this whole theory to the test.
A critical study, yes. They took a group of infertile women who all had verifiably high PI scores, so poor uterine blood flow, and they gave them twice-weekly electroacupuncture.
And the results.
The results were remarkable. Their PI scores dropped significantly, in many cases, right back down into that healthy sub 2.0 range.
So they physically measured the arteries relaxing. They proved that the NO boost was making a real, measurable change to the uterine environment.
Precisely. It showed that acupuncture could turn, let's say, a hostile environment into one that's actually conducive to pregnancy. It's a direct clinical link.
That is compelling. But that's just the uterus. What about what happens before that? How does this circulation affect the eggs themselves back in the ovaries?
This is so important and often gets overlooked. Egg quality is everything, and it is completely dependent on the health of the ovarian follicles where the eggs mature.
And those follicles need a lot of resources, I imagine.
An enormous amount. Think of them like tiny intensive factories. When NO relaxes the blood vessels around the ovaries, it's opening up the supply chain for three things you just can't do without.
Okay, what are they?
First, hormones. Things like FSH. The eggs need a constant, steady drip of these hormones to mature correctly. Second, nutrients. Proteins, sugars, the fuel for all that cell division.
And the third one, which seems to be the real killer for egg quality, is oxygen.
Absolutely. The third is a rich supply of oxygen. If blood flow is poor, the whole area becomes hypoxic, meaning low in oxygen.
And that causes stress.
Massive cellular stress, oxidative damage. It can wreck the mitochondria, the powerhouses inside the egg, which means even if it fertilizes, it might not have the energy to divide properly.
That makes so much sense. So acupuncture, by boosting NO and improving circulation, is basically fighting off that damaging low oxygen state.
It is. It's creating an optimized little microenvironment for that egg to develop in. You get healthier eggs, which is why it's so often used now to prep for IVF cycles. You're just trying to improve the quality of the raw materials.
Okay, so we've covered the female side pretty thoroughly. Let's switch gears. What about for men? How does this same mechanism, this NO-boosted circulation, help with male fertility?
The impact is just as crucial, but the biology is a little different. For the testes, good blood flow serves two main functions. The first is the same as the ovaries, delivering hormones and nutrients for sperm production, spermatogenesis.
And the second function?
The second is all about temperature control.
Ah, right. Sperm need to be kept cool.
They're famously sensitive. They need to be about 2 to 4 degrees Celsius cooler than the rest of the body, so around 34, maybe 35 degrees. If it gets too warm, everything suffers. The count, the movement, the shape.
So how does the circulatory system pull that off?
The body has this incredible built-in cooling system. It's a special network of veins called the pampiniform plexus.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But think of it like a car's radiator. You have this web of veins carrying cool blood away from the testes, and it's wrapped all around the artery that's bringing warm blood in. The heat transfers from the warm arterial blood to the cooler venous blood before it can overheat the important machinery.
That's brilliant. But if your circulation is sluggish, that heat exchange isn't going to work very well, is it?
It completely breaks down. If the flow is slow, the venous blood can't carry the heat away fast enough.
Yeah.
The area stays too warm. On top of that, waste products and inflammatory stuff hang around, damaging the developing sperm. The NO boost from acupuncture just helps that whole cooling system run more efficiently.
And just like with the uterine artery study, we have actual evidence for this on the male side, too. They've measured this.
They have. There was a great study that looked at scrotal skin temperature in men with low sperm counts. And they found that in the men who started out too warm, acupuncture consistently brought that temperature down.
So the vasodilation was powerful enough to help the body physically shed that excess heat.
That's what it looks like. And the coolest part was, the men whose temperatures dropped were the ones who saw clear, significant improvements in their semen analysis.
And why?
Across the board. Better overall sperm count, improved motility, which is how well they swim, and better morphology, meaning more of them had the correct shape to actually fertilize an egg.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really comprehensive look from a single gas molecule all the way to, well, to the building blocks of life. Let's try to sum up the big takeaway for everyone listening.
I think the core message is this. Acupuncture's role in fertility isn't just some vague stress-reducing concept. It's rooted in hard biochemistry. It works by targeting and enhancing your body's natural release of nitric oxide.
And that NO is the key. It's the signal that relaxes blood vessels and improves circulation right where you need it most, to the ovaries, the uterus, and the testes.
It's a physiological prep tool, a very specialized one.
And that mechanism really gives us a solid scientific reason for why we see such promising results, especially when it's combined with other fertility treatments.
Yeah.
It kind of bridges the gap between this ancient practice and modern medicine.
It really does. It gives everyone a shared biochemical language to use, which, it leads to a final thought for you to chew on.
Go for it.
If we know that the fundamental mechanism here is increasing local circulation through this NO-cGMP pathway, well, think beyond fertility. What other chronic conditions, what other bodily functions that really depend on good blood flow and reduced stress? What else could be positively influenced by this very specific nitric oxide boost?
That's a great question. Something to think about until the next time we take the deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.